Olympics without Russians. Almost. Russia deports Ukrainians from Ukrainian land, just like the Soviet times. The Kremlin fears its own army. Why? Good afternoon. These topics in more detail at UATV English Studios online with me, Henry Keane, in yet another attempt to bring hard truth in easy terms as usual for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. This Friday, the Olympic Games open in Paris, this time having 20 times less athletes from Russia than in Tokyo 2021. I wonder why is that? And they will perform under a neutral flag. Ukraine, despite the full-scale invasion of Russia, will be represented by 147 athletes, though, which is not much less than at the previous Summer Olympics when 155 participated. For the first time, the Ukrainian House will be operating at the Olympic Games, where the public will be presented with a homemade barbell that Ukrainian athletes used when training during Russian occupation. It's only one of the whole bunch of problems, actually, in Paris. Certainly the Paris Games are going to become an aim for Putin, and France is aware. So Russians will also fight for medals in Paris, a neutral medal under a neutral flag. According to the Human Rights Watch Global Rights Compliance, more than half of the Russian and Belarusian athletes allowed to participate in the Paris Olympics have ties to the Russian military or national security services or support the war in Ukraine. 10 Russian and 7 Belarusian athletes cleared to compete in the Paris Olympics have already violated International Olympic Committee neutrality rules over Russia's invasion of Ukraine and should be suspended. Global Rights Compliance, which monitors violations of international humanitarian law during the conflict and helps war crimes prosecutors gather evidence of alleged wrongdoing, said it had provided the IOC with direct evidence to support those claims. However, according to human rights activists, the committee ignored these warnings. In easy terms, all you need to know about the Paris Olympics is that there are 479 Ukrainian athletes that are not going to take part because murdered by Russia. Some Russian athletes hiding under a neutral flag in Paris are approving Russian criminal aggression against Ukraine. And these murderers will be in Paris. When you forcibly occupy someone's homeland, and locals openly hate you for that, what do you do to keep control over the territory? That's right, you swap the occupied people to your own folk. That is exactly what Russia does, aggressively replacing the population in annexed Crimea and other occupied territories of Ukraine. Russian authorities are forcing Ukrainians to obtain Russian passports and pressing hard on young Ukrainians. Since the occupation and annexation of Crimea and the start of the so-called hybrid war in Donbass, Ukrainian and Crimean Tatar human rights activists have repeatedly reported that the Russian authorities are in fact displacing locals, replacing them with people from the Russian hinterland. I'm not sure what to call it, actually, in easy terms, genocide or deportation. So all these Russian deeds, what are they in terms of international law, I wonder?
For more than 2 years of the Great War, Russia has not allowed the creation of a single green evacuation corridor that would allow children to leave the dangerous occupied territories. Children living in the territory of Ukraine, occupied by the Russian Federation, have been perceived by the aggression country as its property, with whom the occupation authorities allegedly have the right to do anything they want: to move, deport, place them in Russian families under guardianship, or give them up for adoption, destroy information about their Ukrainian origin by changing their names and surnames, dates of birth, and force them to acquire Russian citizenship. But most importantly, they are allegedly entitled to remand hundreds of thousands of children into the new Russian citizens, as according to various estimates, more than 1.5 million children continue to live in the temporary occupied territories of Ukraine. All of them are at risk of war crimes, including deportation. Dmytro Lubinets, Ukrainian Parliamentary Commissioner for Human Rights.
Well, let us all take a minute and look at what Russians actually do on the occupied territories of Ukraine. We all heard Soviet Russian authorities often criticize other countries, especially Ukraine and my native Baltic countries, for dismantling Soviet-era monuments, equating such actions to the rehabilitation of Nazism, not less, an attempt to rewrite the history. Well, I wonder what is it that then we are witnessing now? As a proud ally of the Soviet regime, the Kremlin ought to make people forget the atrocities of the said Soviet regime. In Russian-controlled Lugansk, monuments to the victims of Stalin's repressions and victims of the Great Famine of Holodomor were just demolished. Videos of the demolition of monuments are actively distributed by Telegram channels controlled by the Russian administration. In the Kremlin, nothing new. The Kremlin is a 300% bunch of Soviet criminals and murderers, and so are their ways. Murderers and criminal ways, attempting to hide their dirty deeds almost 100 years ago and also now. For the Kremlin, the cost of maintaining its occupational force and support personnel is soaring due to, let's put it mildly, unwillingness of subordinates to die for Putin's ill imperial ambitions. And so Moscow is forced to double the pay for medics and paramedics and other medical personnel who are sent to the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine, as the locals mostly do not want to cooperate with the enemy or have left the land already. Well, what's territory for the Kremlin is a homeland indeed for Ukrainians, and living under Russia is no way an option for them. The Kremlin believes that the return of its soldiers from Ukraine will become, I quote the Kremlin now, the main factor of political and social risk during Vladimir Putin's new, or better said, lifelong term. Oh my God, no. But how can this be true after all? Can this happen in a country like Russia that, as the Kremlin claims, is waging a righteous war for, as the Kremlin claims, the original Russian lands and whose rules of life, as the Kremlin claims, unshakable and endlessly traditional? Russian soldiers returning home are, as the Kremlin claims again, heroes, and as the Kremlin claims, should be praised as such, but somehow it just does not happen and work the way the Kremlin claims. Murderers, rapists, cannibals, felons of all sorts dipped into the fire of a criminal Russian war in Ukraine. I wonder, why can't they fit into Russian society when back to Russia? There is such a social lifting program in Russia. Well, not in the whole Russia, but somewhere not far from the Kremlin at least. And that program, as the Kremlin claims, will teach modern methods and technologies of management and teamwork to those Russian murderers returning from the war. And this program is called, I'm not joking, the Time of the Heroes. So upon graduation, Russian murderers will receive a master's degree in management. From murderers to managers, could there be a more Russian way, I wonder? The Kremlin, however, has not yet said anything about the future actual employment of former Russian murderers turned into managers, but another war may be an answer. So what is known for sure is that there are only about 100 applicants to this program to that moment, while several 100,000 future Russian managers are fighting in Ukraine now. Quite a non-standard monetary incentive for military under contract also works in Russia. The American Institute for the Study of War, in its latest report, said that one of the Russian governors announced a new initiative. Anyone who brings a friend to the military enlistment center gets 100,000 rubles, which is about $1,100. In case his friend signs a contract, turn a friend into cannon fodder and get $1,000. I wonder, what if we in Ukraine just pay $2,000 to anyone in Russia who does not go to war? What happens then, you think? That's it for tonight. It was me, Henry Keane, and our team at UATV English, hopefully to bring some hard truth in easy terms. Please like, share, and comment. Your voice matters indeed, as it helps Ukrainian voice to be shared globally. More to come already tomorrow. Stay safe and tune for more. Thank you. See you soon.